I'm Maggie. Welcome to Experiments in Crafting. Last week I was in Michigan for my anniversary. So it was our first anniversary. We decided that we were going to go to northern Michigan. There's a dark sky park up there, and I wanted to just look at the stars. Turns out we didn't actually need to go to the dark sky park, and we ended up not going because there were no people camping in Michigan. So we stayed at a campsite, and we were literally the only two there. And so we were able to get pictures where we were at without a problem. So we were near Mackinac City. I've got a couple of pictures for anyone who wants to see them. I did wear my hat, and it served me pretty well. It was pretty chilly on the water. So I don't know if you want to turn. So there's just me standing in front of the Mackinac, or this is the bridge from the mainland Michigan to the Upper Peninsula. Going out of Mackinac City to St. Ignace, Ignace, whatever, I don't know. The very southern part of the Upper Peninsula. And then you want to flip through. This is just a picture we were able to get of the night sky from where we were camping. And the next picture is of me and my husband camping. It was, like I said, it was very nice. There was nobody around. And it was pretty chilly. So, it was a fun time. But all of that to say that we did spend some time driving around Michigan. There wasn't a whole lot to do because it was pretty off season. Mackinac City is a pretty seasonal area, and so a lot of the shops weren't open. But we did drive to I guess it was still northern Michigan, but it was pretty far south northern Michigan, or north central Michigan. And we found a place called Arnie's Arts and Crafts in Houghton Lake, Michigan. And so I've got a whole bunch of yarn to show you from there. And some beads and some other random stuff that I picked up there. I've also got some yarn. So last week we did, with my family, I did Thanksgiving on Saturday. And I was able to go into a yarn store not far from my sister's house. It's a pretty little shop, but it was pretty well stocked. I liked their selection there. And I've been trying to go. They've been open for a year, and I've been trying to go, but it seems like I end up at my sister's house on either Sunday or Monday when I have extra time to do stuff, and the yarn store is not open on Sunday or Monday, which is pretty typical of local yarn stores. But I just have not had a chance to get in there, and so I was able to do that on Small Business Saturday, and they had a couple of deals, and so I got some stuff from there. And then I've also got some stuff from Hobby Lobby, which is not on the table because it was taking up too much room. I've been there a couple times, and I've got some stuff to show you guys from there. So, I would say the first thing I'm going to do is say welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight, and hopefully you're up for seeing a whole bunch of yarn. If you have questions about crochet, about any of the yarns I'm showing, about any other yarn, just throw those in the live chat, and we will talk about those as the questions come up. Otherwise, I'm just going to start going through the yarns, and I'll tell you where I got them and who makes them and whatever I can about the yarns. So I'm going to just get started here. So this is, this pile here is from Yarn Hollow. That is the yarn shop that's in Crete, Illinois. So I got all of this there. They were running a special. If you spent $50 on Plymouth yarn, you got $10 off, and that was a Small Business Saturday special. And then they were also running a deal. If you bought anything from Blue Sky Fibers, you got a free pattern download. And then I also picked up a couple of other things that were not part of the Small Business Saturday deals. For those of you who don't know, Small Business Saturday is the Saturday after Black Friday that you're supposed to like support small business and not shop big business. But a lot of the yarn stores will participate in that because they're all small businesses, at least the local yarn stores, that is. All right, so this yarn that I picked up is from Plymouth Yarns. All right, slide this back so that we can do the close-up shot. This yarn is called Hotcakes. It is a 75% acrylic, 25% wool. It is a color-changing caked yarn, similar to a Karen Cakes or something like that, but it does have the 25% wool. Let's see. It is a 200-gram ball. It is 404 yards. That should make it a worsted weight or closing in on an Aran weight yarn. They recommend a US 8 needle or a H hook. They don't give millimeters. H hook, I think, is a 5mm hook. So this is, I don't know, this was sort of a rainbow, but I like jewel tones, so this is kind of a nice fall, toned down rainbow. So, it doesn't have a color name, it's just called color number 9. So, Plymouth Yarns. These yarns are also from Plymouth. For those of you who are not familiar with Plymouth, they are a local yarn store brand. So, similar to Michael's has like a house brand, which is Loops and Threads. A lot of stores, Hobby Lobby has all of the Yarn Bee yarns. Local yarn stores, you'll find Plymouth and Cascade. They're sort of house brands for local yarn stores. They're a little bit nicer than your like base acrylic from some of the big box stores, so nicer than a Red Heart Super Saver, but they're still acrylic yarns. I guess I shouldn't say they're only acrylic yarns. That's usually who. Let me try this again. If you're going to buy acrylic yarn at a local yarn store, that's generally the brands that they'll be. They'll either be Cascade or Plymouth. So hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, so we've got this yarn is also from Plymouth. It is a 70% baby alpaca, 30% bamboo. So we've got this yarn here. This is called Veneto. Hopefully you can read that label there. I've got colors 29 and 25. So sort of a like sky blue, teal color, and then this sort of orchid color. These are an interesting yarn. They're chainette construction. I don't know how well you can see that, but if I get one of these separated out here, let me push some of this off the screen. Okay, I think I'm back live. Hopefully the audio is better. So we're going to switch views and make sure that it looks a little bit better. Once we readjust my window that I watch myself on. So this is the Veneto yarn. And I've got it in like an orchid color and then sort of a blue teal color. I sort of wish that Plymouth named their colors because it would help me tell you what they are a little bit better. But again, color 25 and color 29. And then these are sort of a chainette style yarn. And also we're zoomed back in, so let us know if the audio is correct now. Because this is baby alpaca, they probably went with the chainette style yarn because it holds together a little bit better than a spun yarn. Baby alpaca doesn't tend to be very strong, so making it a chain style helps it. All right, that looks like audio is better. All right, so those are all of the Plymouth yarns that I got. I also got this really intense teal blue. I'm really bad at... I used to be really good at naming colors. I don't know what... I guess teal is the best descriptor for this. It's a really, really pretty blue. One of the things that's very interesting about this yarn is that it's 100% cotton. And you guys have heard me talk about cottons before, where I will say that they don't take colors very intensely, and that is not true of this yarn. It is really, really intensely teal. So you can see that there. Let's see if it has a color name. Color is Caribbean, and Caribbean's a good descriptor for it. This is, let's see, I'm going to assume it's 100 grams. Oh, there it is. 100 grams, 150 yards, 100% cotton. They recommend a 4.5 to 5.5 millimeter knitting needle, which is a US 7 to 9. That would also be a 7 to I hook. So you can see that a little bit better. It is labeled worsted on here. It says organic cotton worsted. 150 yards per 100 grams is probably closer to a Aran weight. And then I think we didn't go over any stats on the Veneto yarn, so I'm going to go back real quick. This is 50 grams, 98 yards. They recommend... Some of these yarn stores are really bad at putting labels over where I need to read. It just says a US 10.5 needle. It doesn't give me knitting, or it doesn't give me crochet hooks, and it doesn't give me millimeters. So whatever a US 10.5 needle, looks like a US 9 is a 5.5, so probably something in the ballpark of a 6.5 millimeter crochet hook, I think is what they're recommending. And again, 50 grams or 98 yards, which makes this roughly worsted weight. Though, keep in mind that alpaca blooms like crazy. So when you get alpaca wet, it will puff and sort of take up the space. And that will make a worsted weight yarn act much heavier, even though it's very light. So, they're probably recommending a much heavier needle, like I think probably in the ballpark of 6.5 millimeters, which is a K hook, because you need to leave space for the alpaca to bloom. So, Plymouth yarn, Hotcakes, Veneto. This is the Blue Sky Fibers organic worsted cotton, even though it feels a little bit heavier than worsted, maybe. And then what else did we get from there? The Malbrigo is also from there. This is Malbrigo Rios. Malbrigo makes a really nice workhorse yarn. It's nicer than just any old acrylic yarn. It's 100% wool. It's beautifully dyed, but it's just a really basic yarn. So yeah, this color is called Pines. It's a little bit more teal than like hunter green, but it's got some dark spots in here. It was really pretty color. So you might notice that there's a bit of a theme in like these blue teal colors. I made my sister a baby alpaca hat like a year or so ago, and she wore it. It was one of the ponytail hats so that you can like wear your hair through the top of it. And she wore it a couple of times, and it got left in a pocket, and the jacket that she left it in got washed, and it shrunk, and it's like this big now. She actually has it, because it's got a hole in the top, she's got it on a giraffe, like a Thai Beanie Baby giraffe. So it's, one of the bigger Beanie Baby, like, stuffed animals. She's got it on the giraffe, and it fits like a little cover for it. So it's itty bitty now. But she asked me if I would make her a new hat. And so I picked her some teals, which is what she wanted. So she ended up going with the cotton. I'm not sure how that's going to work as a hat, honestly. It might not be warm enough, but we'll see. We'll see how it does. Handful of cottons. Stamping Bandit is commenting along and giving us some feedback on the audio, so thank you very much for that. The Is It Worsted Weight, I think I went back and answered. And just commenting on some of the colors there. Helen is asking if we are still live, and we are. Hopefully the stream's going out okay. We did have to break off for a second to fix the audio. But I think everything's fixed. So, yeah. So that's not actually everything that I got from Yarn Hollow. I did also pick up, I got a tiny button. Yeah. I also got a, Pom Pom. This is rabbit fur. And as far as I can tell, actual fur. It is super soft and cuddly. I don't know what I'm going to use. I mean, it's a Pom Pom, so I'm going to use it on a hat, but not sure what hat this is destined for. It feels honestly so much nicer than like an acrylic Pom Pom, but obviously is not. It's animal fur, so yeah. So I picked this up. I don't know. I like it, so I'm gonna use that on something. And then I have two little, they're called Pixie Sticks from Knitted Wit. These are just little tiny sock yarn minis, I guess. So you can use them as an accent color for like an edging or something like that. People use them for the heels and toes of socks. If you knit socks, I don't crochet socks, and I don't knit well enough to make socks. So I've got a couple of these. These are Mermaid Rainbow here and Ember Eye, which is a really cool like black and red and silver colorway. The mermaid one is it's got like green and pink and red, purple, and some gray in there, which really makes it kind of interesting. It kind of breaks up the rainbowiness and makes it a little bit more interesting. And then obviously there's some like silvery lurex around the outside. So that is everything that I got from Yarn Hollow. That again is the yarn store that's in Crete, Illinois. So if you happen to be up in that area, you should give them a try and look around and see if there's something that you like. I'm going to set all this stuff off to the side, unless there are any additional questions on any of these. Let's see. Helen said, hope I had a great Thanksgiving. I hope that everyone out there had a great Thanksgiving. We did a lot of driving. So we had a family Thanksgiving we're in central Illinois, all of our families in the Chicago suburbs, and so we drove up on Thanksgiving Day, and then we drove back up on Saturday. And that's when I got to go to the yarn store and spent the day with my family. So it was a good Thanksgiving, and I got all my fall decorations down and all my Christmas decorations up. So hopefully you guys had a good weekend. And yeah, Thanksgiving. So last week we didn't stream because we had just gotten back from being out of town in Michigan, and then I had work. It was a really short week, and I was baking, and so it was just so busy, and there were so many things going on, and just due to Thanksgiving, we didn't stream. So thank you for joining us, and welcome back to everybody who's missed the stream. And welcome. I know that somebody at the very beginning of the stream said it was the first time that they had been watching. Hopefully they're still enjoying it. And welcome to anybody else who's new and just joining us for the first time. Helen's asking, how many yards are the little hanks? They are 45 yards. which I think makes them probably about 10 grams. So if they were 100 grams, they would be about 450 for sock yarn. They're probably about 10 grams. They might even be a little bit less. There's no gram, there's no weight on here. So they're about 10 grams. Just enough probably to do the very last row of an edging on a shawl. Or like I said, heels or toes on socks. All right. Moving on to the stuff from Arnie's. So, like I said, in Michigan, there wasn't a whole lot to do, like, shopping-wise, because it was just off-season for them. It was also the week before Thanksgiving, and I'm sure, like, even if some of the stores were going to be open, some of them may have closed down for, Thanksgiving and whatnot. So, that still didn't stop me from doing a little bit of yarn shopping. We were in Mackinac City, but we crossed the big bridge there, and then went into the Upper Peninsula, and then decided to drive all the way to the Canadian border. And I got all the way to Sault Ste. Marie, which is the city just before you cross into Canada. My passport's expired, so we did not go into Canada, and instead I went into a Joann Fabric. So I drove, I don't know how many hundreds of miles, 700 or something like that, to go shopping at Joann Fabric. I actually did not get anything there. It was not all that interesting. But we did find a local yarn store in Houghton Lake, Michigan. And so I'm going to show you what I got there. I think we spent like 2 hours there. It was not just a yarn store. So they had a whole bunch of yarn and a lot of brands that I had heard of but hadn't really had much experience with. And then some brands I had just not heard of before. But they had just literally everything crafting that you could think of. A lot of very obscure crafts that you wouldn't find at like Michael's or Joann Fabric. They had a ton of supplies for basket weaving. I'm trying to remember what else was weird. They had some stuff for doing chainmail. They had lots of jewelry. Oh yeah, a couple aisles of stuff specifically for macrame. But yeah, a lot of very specific crafts that you don't see represented in a lot of other places. And then of course they had a whole quilting room. They had sewing stuff. They had a actual it was a weird store because it was like 4 stores strung next to each other, and you could walk freely back and forth between them, but they almost were like 4 separate stores next to each other. But one of the stores in there was a whole t-shirt shop where you could get like a specific t-shirt like screen printed on. I don't think it was actually screen printed. It was like heat transferred, but you get like custom t-shirts made while you were there. And sewing stuff and yeah, all sorts of stuff. So it was a cool place. If you find yourself in the middle of Michigan, and want to do some shopping, I think they were open 7 days a week. So that, yeah, the middle of northern Michigan. It was, I don't, yeah, it was in the glove about here. That doesn't really help. It was about an hour and a half or 2 hours south of Mackinac City, almost due south. We took whatever highway that was, 75 or whatever, and went like 2 hours south. So, let's see, a couple more comments. Stephanie's joining. Welcome. Thank you for joining. Stampin' Bandit said she lived in Sault Ste. Marie, first job out of university. Looks like on the Canadian side. And then a couple people saying it sounded like a fun, Bridget saying it sounded like a fun trip, and Stampin' Bandit saying it sounded like an amazing store. Actually, the your name reminded me that they had a whole bunch of stamping stuff too, like aisle of stamps and inks and things like that, and a lot of like stampable glitter. I remember there was like a whole like end cap of just glitter. Really, really fine stuff for doing like card making. All right.
It's probably the nicest yarn store I've ever been in. It was probably better than a yarn show in some ways.
Yeah. My husband's saying it was one of the nicest yarn stores he's been in, and one of the like better in some ways than like a yarn show. Just with variety and being able just to
Just as expensive.
yeah, it that is one thing that I did notice. Their prices were a little bit steep, even for a yarn store. So when you go into Joann and Michael's and craft stores, like big box stores like that, you expect to pay $3 to $8 per skein of yarn. When you go in a local yarn store, you should expect that you're going to pay more. For the brands like Cascade, Plymouth, things like that, you're looking at closer to $6 to $12 to $15. And then when you get into hand dyed yarns, you're really expecting about $25 to $30 per skein of yarn. This yarn store seemed to really be pushing the limits of that like $15 to $18 range. Obviously there were things that were cheaper, there were things that were more expensive, but they were really seemed like they were on the steep end of things. In particular, this Hotcakes yarn, I passed on at the store in Michigan because I think they had it for 19. My husband thinks it was 22, somewhere in the $20 ballpark. It was only 13 at the store in Illinois. So, maybe they were a little bit pricier. I don't know. That was my perception, but they weren't so outlandish that I didn't buy anything because here's a whole pile of stuff that I've got to show you. All right, so I'm going to slide this stuff out of the way, and we'll go through these, hopefully at some reasonable pace. All right, so first two I've got here, these are the same yarn, same colorway. This is Mottola by Louisa Harden. This is another one of those, like I said, the yarn stores, some of them are really bad about putting the prices over the vital information. Let's see. This is a 80% wool, 20% silk yarn. It's a 50-gram ball with 273 yards. That should put it in the fingering weight ballpark. It is a single ply, sort of a roving twist, really, really lightly twisted single ply yarn. Let's see. They are recommending a US 5 to 6 knitting needle, which is a 3.75 to 4 millimeter, which makes it a F to G hook, is what you'd be looking for to crochet this up. So, again, a lot of the local yarn store brands don't name their colorways. This color is 125. And it's got a really pretty, like, navy blue that's got kind of a gray hue to it. And then these, like, sort of coffee tones, brown to like a caramely color to a light ivory, I guess, and then fades into the blue. So for something like this, it looks like it, I can't really tell, it looks like it's going to be a striping yarn. I would probably turn this into a shawl, but I turn everything into a shawl given my choice. It would also probably make a really nice cowl. It's probably too expensive to make into something like a sweater. You certainly could. It would make a very nice sweater, but being that it's 50-gram balls and 80% wool, 20% silk, it's a little bit on the pricey end to make like a article of clothing, because you'd really be looking at like 6 or 8 of these to make a sweater. Same problem with like a blanket or something like that. You'd really fingerless gloves, a really nice like detailed fine hat, but not something that's going to be particularly warm. Not that it won't be warm at all, but it will be more of like an accessory than it will be for functionality. A hat, you could probably do like a double layer ear warmer, something like that. But you're going to be looking at making something on the small side with a little bit of detail. The thing to note about this yarn is that it's single ply, so it's going to be more difficult to frog. For those of you who haven't worked with much single ply, you might be familiar with what's the really popular one? Red Heart Boutique Unforgettable. That's a single ply roving style yarn. This is very similar to that. Stamping Bandit's recommending a sheer scarf, and yeah, that would be a perfect application for this. A long scarf, even something like a stole, like a wrap. If it was pretty open, you wouldn't need a ton of yarn, but this would work up really nice with that. Something like that. Yeah, it's got a ton of halo, and that is just characteristic of something that's not real tightly spun. I am noticing here too, like, I don't know if you can see this, but there's a chunk in here where it's not really tightly spun at all. That is just a characteristic of roving style yarn. They can have thicks and thins like that. You just work with them. But it's a place where they switched colors and they didn't get the twist quite right when they did the color switch. So, it's still a very nice yarn, but it does have, at work we would call them slubs, but they're thicks and thins and places where the yarn is not quite right. So, again, Louisa Harden, and that's Amitola, Amitola. All right, I've got another Louisa Harden yarn here. This one is called Scintile, and it is a sparkling, it says brushed wool and metallic blend. It's 49% acrylic, 39% polyester metallic, and 12% wool. It's 100 grams, 230 meters, 251 yards. It is a number 4 worsted weight yarn, and they recommend US 7 to 9, 4.5 to 5.5 knitting needles. And this one actually has a crochet hook on it, 5.5 to 6.5 millimeter crochet hook, which is an I to K hook. That's what they recommend. This looks a little heavier than worsted just by eye, but it might work up like worsted. It's pretty interesting. You're not going to be able to see the detail that I can see, I don't think. But there's like a chainette gold and silver like tube, and then sort of like puffed all around the tube, possibly through the tube, is like a blue fuzz. I wouldn't even really call it yarn. It's just fibers. Like all, what it looks like is a tube with just like a tube, and then like there's just fibers sticking out through it. So it's sort of a weird construction yarn, but it doesn't really look twisted at all. But the fibers are not like super easy to pull out. They're not just falling off. So, it is really sparkly, and it's going to work up really cool. I sort of want to make a hat out of this, but there's way too much for just one hat. I think it's at 100 grams, 230, yeah. So there's probably 2 hats worth here. Yeah, my husband's suggesting hat and fingerless gloves. I think that's probably what I'll do with it is, I think it's just going to make a fun hat. And
Really want to see what that works up like. It looks so
yeah, maybe like a gray pom pom on top. If I could find a like silverer pom pom, like something with some sparkle to it, it might be fun. Though a plain one might be better and let the hat sparkle on its own. I have a navy blue pom pom too. Navy blue actually kind of looks cool. Blends, but yeah. Anyway, so that is Scintile, and this came in a bunch of colors. I like the navy blue, but there were some other really pretty colors available in this as well. if you have a local yarn store that doesn't carry these brands, you can often get these yarns on somewhere like yarn.com, which is Webb's store, or I Like Wool Warehouse. I don't know if they carry these brands, but they are out of the UK, but their shipping speed and rates are competitive with anyone inside the country. At least inside this country for domestic shipping. Yeah, you might also be able to get your local yarn store to order them, especially if the owner is open to ordering different brands. I know they have like vendors, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time for them to get things in. But yeah, it's a it's pretty cool looking yarn. So if you can get your hands on it, it might be worth giving a shot. Again, something to note on both of these yarns, they're probably not very, very beginner friendly. If you've done a couple of projects, you'll probably be okay, but they are not going to frog nicely. You're not going to be able to pull your stitches out because they're basically just balls of halo. They just have so much like little fiber coming off the edge, and that will tend to like knit itself together, and then you can't pull your stitches back out real easy. So,
Does that have any special considerations for blocking then? Because you would get it wet.
Yeah, so my husband's asking if it has special considerations for blocking. Something where it's wool and silk, you can block real easy and you won't have too much trouble, but you should, when you have a yarn that has a ton of halo, you don't want to touch it much. Put it in the water, get it wet, or something like this is a good candidate for like spray or steam blocking, because then you're not going to bother the hair too much. If you move it around a whole bunch in the water and then you're rough with it when you squeeze the water out, you're going to end up causing pills and it's not going to look as nice. This yarn is mostly acrylic and polyester. It doesn't, I'm bad with symbols here, but it doesn't look like it's supposed to go in the dryer. I would probably, you probably can hand wash this in like cool water, but it's probably not going to block all that well, just being that it's such a small percentage wool. It might block a little, but I don't know. I don't generally block like hats. Maybe I should. But yeah, this yarn might be a little bit trickier to block, but same considerations. If you're going to block something that has a ton of hair or halo, just be very careful not to touch it too much. Put it in the water, let it soak. Yeah, you don't want to like stir it and swirl it and just soak it. Pick it up, squeeze, don't wring. Squeeze the water out, lay it on a towel, roll it up, keep squeezing the water out, and then leave it alone. Let it dry, don't touch it, don't move it, and just leave it be. So, I should also mention that this is color 9 on this, color 125, color 9. So if you're going to look those up, you can get those. All right, moving on. What do I have? Let's go to Plymouth yarn. So I showed you some Plymouth from the other store. This is Plymouth from Arnie's. Get these guys, put them down here. So these yarns are Plymouth Solstice. It is, again, a chainette style yarn. Try and get them all on camera. There we go. All right. So this is Plymouth Solstice. It is a chainette style yarn. Let me see what I've got here. 60% baby alpaca, 25% extra fine merino, 15% yak. They recommend a US 7 knitting needle. And that's all of the information I've got there. 50 grams gives you 219 yards, which puts this in the ballpark of a, let's see, 50, that's 440. You're going to be at like a sport weight yarn. Yeah, little heavier than fingering weight, but probably about a sport weight yarn. Though again, we're back to having alpaca, and especially at 60%, this yarn is probably going to bloom a little bit. So you're going to want a bigger hook than you would normally use, and just to know that your stitches are going to sort of puff to fill in the space. It is a chainette style yarn, just like the other one. I have not actually worked with chainette alpaca before. So I don't know if that construction changes how much it blooms or not. That'd be probably something worth either experimenting with or just looking up. But again, when I say chainette style, I mean that it's already sort of knitted into a string. So it's very, very fine, and they made sort of like a knit. This one's not actually tube style. I think it's more of like what they call an I-cord. But it's basically just knit into a long string, rather than being plied and twisted. So, yeah, I thought these were really pretty. Hopefully you can see sort of the gray tone to them. That's the yak coming through. If you go on, what is the name of that shawl? It was called the Sugar Plum Shawl, but I don't think that's what it's called anymore. Rachie Newen Designs, I did a, I tested a pattern for her. I did the pattern in, sort of a light pink to dark purple colorway. If you look at hers, it looks like it is sort of a grayish purple to dark purple color. We had exactly the same colorways, but hers was on a yak base and mine was on a merino base. Mine is like bright and pink and purple, and hers is sort of like muted and gray. My husband put the link in there so you can see what I'm talking about. But mine's like halfway down the page. She like put it on the pattern page. Hers should be like the first picture on there. But yeah, there's two different colors there. And you can really see the difference in the 100% merino versus having a little bit of yak in there. Yak just makes everything really gray and has this really interesting quality about it. I haven't worked with a whole lot of yak, but I think it's really sort of a cool color. This should be probably like a light pink, and on camera, at least on my screen, is showing sort of gray. It's got really a really cool color to it. It's sort of mauve. And this one here is, you can tell if it was on 100% merino, it would be really bright blue, but it's got like a muted quality to it. So, these are probably destined to be cowls or hats. I'm not sure which yet. Really depends on how they work up. But these would be nice yarns for pretty much any like winter accessory application. A couple comments. Stephanie said it reminds me of Harry Potter. She was talking about the blue sparkly yarn, I believe. I think that comment came in when I was talking about this one. And Dizzy Stitches Crochet says that they love chainette yarn. A whole bunch of the ones that I've shown tonight have been chainette. I've worked with a couple of chainette yarns, and I really liked them. They're interesting. You have to be very careful not to split your stitches. It's pretty easy to work with one where it's a really tiny chainette, but I'm a little bit actually worried about it. This is also a chainette style yarn. But these chains are gigantic. Very, very much. Let me grab a crochet hook here. find something smallish. Pretty easily splittable with a relatively large, just a 4.5 millimeter crochet hook. So just know that if you're working with a chainette style yarn and not a tube yarn, so I've shown some tube yarns. I'd have to go digging for one. The Scrubology Scrub It yarn was a tube yarn, which is actually like a full tube and then they stuff stuff inside of it. Those are near impossible to split your stitches unless you're working with like a needle. These though are just a knit chain. And so you can very easily stab a crochet hook through there, and could easily split a stitch. Which blue one? Oh. My husband's suggesting, so to Dizzy Stitches, suggesting that I bring out the Scintile yarn again in case you just joined, and show this is also a chainette style yarn. This one's a little bit different. I just showed this. It's got a chain on the inside the center here, but then a whole bunch of yarn somehow attached. I'm not really clear if it's through the center and just fuzzing out, or if it's sort of wrapped around the outside. It's really unclear, but it's a very, very cool chainette style yarn. So that's Louisa Harding Scintile. This one was the Plymouth Veneto, and then these are the Plymouth Solstice yarns. Real quick, I think I went through numbers here. Yeah, I talked about those. Color 23 turquoise. These ones actually have names. And color 21 gray. Which is interesting because it looks very pink to me. There was a much grayer gray. There's definitely a pink hue to this gray. Alright. Set these guys down. This is the last of my Plymouth yarn. This is a yarn called Pendenza, Pendenza. It is 100% Egyptian cotton, and it is mercerized. So these really bright, beautiful, intense colors are due to the mercerization. This one has purple, pink, and then there is a really lovely blue tucked inside here. So this is a really nice striping yarn. They had a beautiful sample worked up in the store. It was a knit sample, but I'm hoping to do something similar. It was just a thin little cowl. Because this is mercerized cotton, it's not going to be like real cozy, but it's going to show stitch definition just stunningly. So I found a little wrap cowl that I really liked the other day. That I think I might make this one into. And I'm not sure what I'm going to make out of this, but it's a cowl that starts out as a swirl and then sort of gets big into like a swoop. It was really cool. It had a button here, and then it was meant to just come around and be just a cowl. Sort of a cross between a shawl and a cowl. I think I sent it to you on Discord on like Saturday or something. Well, more just put the link in. I don't remember what it was called. It was a swirly cowl that I think I mentioned the Pendenza yarn, so might be able to search by that. Let's see, a couple comments before I lose them. Whoops, you switched my thing. Yeah. Some that looks like that, but not chainette. When Hobbyum was open, and then also says never heard of these brands. So all of these brands are local yarn store brands. So if you shop primarily at big box stores, they won't carry any of these brands. And then even if you do shop at a local yarn store, not all yarn stores carry the same brands. So Plymouth Yarns is a pretty common one, but they make so many different lines of yarn, and most yarn stores only carry 3 or 4 different ones. So you can go to 6 or 7 different yarn stores and you'll see Plymouth Yarns, and everyone will have one that's different. So I'm not sure if that's by design. I don't know if like the vendors try and get stores to not sell the same things, or if it's just there are so many and people like different things. Um, yeah. Additionally, my husband's saying if you're not in the U.S., if you're in Canada, or anywhere else in the world, you might not have these brands available. So these are local yarn store brands in the U.S. Um, yeah. So he's saying hobium looks like it might be Turkish. So if you're not familiar with these brands, it might be because they're U.S. brands. Or like I said, they're just local yarn store brands that you haven't come across. This yarn here, same yarn, 100% Egyptian cotton mercerized. This has a really pretty, so it's got this like dove gray here. It sort of fades. I don't know, what would you even call this color? It's purple, but I don't know. It's really pretty, like dark mauve. I'm not really even sure. Yeah, it sort of looks like my hair when it's fading a little bit. But then there is a really deep, like eggplant purple tucked inside. And then kind of like a lilac in here as well. If I tip the ball a little bit more. So this works up in big stripes. So it'll be a long section of one color and then it'll switch to the next color. It looked like on the sample that they had in the store, it looked like they were nice color transitions, not hard color stops. But I haven't worked the ball up myself to know whether that is the case or not. Just sort of looking at the yarn, it looks like they fade a little bit. So nice color transitions. I posted an example. Oh, on Instagram. So my husband's gonna pull up the picture. He thinks I posted the sample that I took a picture of in the store on Instagram, and he can pull the picture and throw it in the stream, if that's the case. Oh, okay. You're just gonna add the. So he posted the picture there. If you want to see what the worked up sample looks like on this Pendeza yarn.
That's the Instagram post. You have to go over.
Okay. So that's the Instagram post that he linked to, and it is like 8 pictures that I posted all at once. So you got to click the arrows to see all of the pictures from Arnie's. And one of them in there is like a gray to white to blue cowl that I took a close up picture of. It really, really looks beautiful in this yarn. Mercerized cotton just has a really nice gloss to it. For those of you looking to maybe order this, I've got color 11 and color 101. And then real quick, some stats on this. They're few and far between, it looks like. Like I said, 100% Egyptian cotton mercerized and gassed, whatever that means. I'm not actually even familiar with that, which is odd. Let's see, 100 grams, 240 yards. That puts it in the ballpark of worsted, possibly DK weight. They are recommending a 3.75 millimeter knitting needle, which is a US 5. That would be roughly an F hook. And that's about all that they've got to say about that. So, again, Plymouth Pendenza. Let's see, a couple comments. Helen saying, would for a fuller figure, would a shawl look better than a cowl around her neck? Honestly, I don't know. I mean, I wear cowls all the time. I'm not a petite person. So I mean, I wear shawls too. My biggest complaint with shawls is when I like to make 100-gram fingering weight shawls, and if they're not lacy enough, when I wrap, so I usually wear them triangle style. That's my favorite style of shawl. When I put a triangle on and I take the ends and I wrap them, if I didn't make a lacy enough pattern, it's not wide enough to like wrap and sit nicely. So if you use 100-gram fingering weight to do a shawl, and then you work kind of a solid pattern, it makes a littler shawl because you use more of the yarn to make the stitches. And then it just doesn't wrap as nice. And so, given my choice, if I'm going to work something really solid, I would rather a cowl because I can make it a little bit bigger and get it to lay a little bit nicer. If I'm going to make something open and lacy, then a shawl is just fine. So I think it's probably more to do with the final size than it is to do with the shawl versus cowl. It just really is how it works up. Let me grab my bin of finished stuff right here. So this is the pile of stuff that I've got here. So this is a cowl. This is a 100-gram fingering weight cowl. It likes to collapse on itself, but it is relatively open. So it made it pretty large. Let's see if on here. So it opens up pretty nice, but if I lay it out, it collapses. If you want to switch back real quick. So like it collapses down, or I can open it up. But when I put it on, I think it lays pretty nice. You probably can't see it particularly well against my shirt, but lays real nice. I like them to be a little bit away from my neck, and then if I have a jacket on, they kind of tuck up nice, and actually keep me warm. Versus a shawl. I think all of my shawls might be upstairs, the top of the stairs. Yeah, if you want. They're on the couch in the den. You can just bring the whole box. This one's an okay example. So, this one worked up pretty dense, even though it is rather lacy pattern. You can get it to open up, but it's pretty densely packed. But what you can see happens here is if I put this on, again with the gray. This is my bin o. Huh? Yeah. Hold on a second. Let me move some shawls off screen here. Okay. Moved most of the pile. We'll go with something that's a little easier to see against my gray shirt. All right. So this is the one that I was telling you about earlier. This is the same one that the pattern designer Rachie Newen Designs put on her page, and she made it out of yak, and the colors are completely different, even though the dyer used exactly the same colors. But for this one, the problem that I run into is I only used 100 grams, and it's a pretty dense shawl. So you can see there's a lot of stitches used, like I guess a lot of yarn used in these shapes here. And so you don't get as much square footage, I guess, out of the yarn. So when I go to put this on, I've only got these little bitty ends. And so what ends up happening is as I wear it, these work their way and then it falls like this and it drives me crazy. So what I usually end up doing is just tying them in a knot that I then can hide below my hair. I can also then keep it away from my throat because I don't like things touching my throat, and I think Helen just said the same thing. So yeah. I spend a lot of time like fighting this shape from staying on. Where if I take something, this is a 200-gram shawl. So this one is the one I made for my wedding. But you can see I've just got like wingspan for days here. When I wear this one, I've got nice long tails that I can tuck up underneath. And then I can wear this one. It's not anywhere near my throat, even though it looks like it's nice and close. And I've got this whole like long bib. Again, looks really nice with a jacket. Looks very weird with short sleeves. So hopefully that helps a little bit and isn't just straight confusing. But I think cowls look very nice. As long as they are, they sit nice on you. So you might find that you want to adjust them a little bit larger if you're a little bit larger person, especially if you don't like them near your throat, because there are patterns where they're intended to be worn snug on a more average sized person, and then if you don't make them any bigger, they're going to be really, really snug. So my husband's saying, how would you do that? You can go up a hook size. You can go up a hook. Well, you can just go up a hook size and then it would be a little bit bigger. The two better ways would be to add stitches. Generally when a pattern designer designs a pattern, they say that you should chain 120 or any multiple of 10. And that tells you that your repeat is going to be on 10 stitches. So you could just go to 140 and then you'd add 2 repeats. And then when they say, repeat this 10 times around, you would just have to remember that you have to do it 12 times instead. Or, whatever number you go up to, if it's, you just have to remember that you increased it. The other thing that you can do is increase your yarn size and your hook size. So if it calls for fingering weight yarn, and a E-hook, you could use sport weight yarn and a G or H hook. I guess probably a G hook. So that will keep the pattern looking more the same, I guess. It will be, you would use the same pattern, but everything would get just slightly bigger. You don't want to go crazy and go from like fingering weight to chunky, because then you're going to lose, like, you can't really see much in this pattern because it's just all obscured by the size of the yarn. So you're going to lose detail if you get too big. But yeah, those are some options. You can just go up a hook size if you just need it to be a little bit bigger, have a little bit more give. The other thing you can do is just make it bigger. So like if, for example, this pattern here, I used 100 grams of yarn and the pattern called to just repeat until you ran out of yarn. You could just use 200 grams and the shawl would just get bigger. You just keep doing more repeats of the same thing. The pattern repeats over and over again. Most patterns do repeat on some interval. So whether it's a 5-row repeat or a 15-row repeat, you just do another set of repeats to make it one bigger. Yeah. So what my husband's mentioning is that if you, a lot of times you can't go bigger on a gradient yarn. So if you really want to do a gradient shawl, you can't make it slightly bigger, because you'd have to buy a bigger gradient, and a lot of times they're just not available. But if they are available, they're hideously expensive. So one of the things that I really like about fiber optic yarns is that they offer both ends of a gradient that you can buy a second skein. So what I bought here was a gold to damson. Damson is this blue color over here. So I had a skein that was gold to all the way out to damson, and then I had a whole nother skein of damson. And so when I worked this, I actually started with the extra and worked this big section of blue and then switched to my gradient yarn. You could do this the other way around, where you would start with, well, they offer both ends, but you could start with the gold end. The gold would have gone to about, you know what I mean? The gold would have been this section, and it would have been damson by about here. And then the whole end of my shawl, just as big as I wanted to go, would have been blue. So that's a really good option. Fiber optic yarns is the only yarn company that I've seen that offers this. But if you are going to modify a pattern and you're really invested in it, they're a really good way to go, because you get the gradient and then you can pick the end up. Alternatively, you can find a coordinating yarn. If you've got like a speckled yarn, you've only got 100 grams of that, you can find a solid that goes with it to do the edging or something like that. Or stripe it in a way that you like to add a little bit more length to your shawl. So, yeah, so I've got Stephanie, so many shawls. Can you share some of your favorite ones that I've made? Let's see. So this one I'm really attached to, this one that I just had out on screen. I really love the deep fall colors, and it's such a huge shawl, and I don't know, it was made for my wedding, so I guess I'm probably more attached to it because of that. But it's got some really great colors that I wear all the time, so it works with a lot of my clothes. This tends to be my go-to for yarn shows, mostly because it matches my hair when my hair is really well dyed. And I'll wear it down and curled, and then I'll have the shawl on, and it just sort of like blends together, and looks really nice. I actually don't love how white this one gets close to my throat. It kind of like washes my skin out when it's up there. I already have pretty like pink red skin, so having that much white pink near my face. But what I'm usually able to do is sort of tuck it, and get rid of the whitest of the pink so that it looks more like that. So, but yeah, I really like this one. That one's sort of my default. Let's see. It's almost easier to show you ones that I've got issues with. Like I really, really love this one, but turns out that unbleached wool is sort of ugly. This is a speckled gradient, and I love the yarn. I really liked how the border turned out with the speckle. So I got this. This was a mini skein kit from Leading Men Fiber Arts. The border is from Cascade, and so I was really impressed with myself on how well the border went with the speckles. But you can see here that it is like raw, sort of yellow-white wool with blue speckles. And then the next skein added in some pink with the blue. The next one added green with the pink and blue. Then they added more purple and yellow, and finally got some orange mixed in there. And so it's a speckled gradient. I hadn't seen anything like that before. I was really excited to work this shawl up, and I don't know that I've ever worn it. It's pretty, but it's just this natural raw wool is really difficult to coordinate anything with. And it doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't look great with like gray. I don't know, it just doesn't do anything for me when it's on. So I really like this shawl, but I don't know. I have sort of the same problem with this shawl. The yarn was really cool, the pattern was really cool, but it's really hard to coordinate this color palette. It's we used to go, well, in a couple of years ago we went to Farm and Fleet, which is like a farm store around here, and they had all sorts of like winter camo, and one of them was like in this color, and we refer to it as laser camo, and that's pretty much all I can think of this going with. I don't know what sort of camo that was actually for. It was purple and aqua and didn't actually go with anything, but
Probably go with like an almost all white.
yeah, if I wore all white, I could probably pull this off. I wore it actually not too long ago, with something. I don't remember what, but it's just really really hard to coordinate this with anything. So, I guess as a cautionary tale, be very careful. Things that are really cool as yarn might not turn out into anything actually wearable. So just as you're designing your shawl and as you're picking your colors, think about what you're actually going to wear it with and like how it's realistically going to look as a finished object. The other thing that you can see here is that the colors pooled pretty oddly. So there's some like weird striping in here, and then it changes along here. And sort of changes back on the edge. So yeah, there's some weird things going on with this shawl. Still very cool shawl, but pretty weird. Let's see. A whole bunch of comments before they fall off. All right. Bridget says the wedding shawl is gorgeous. Thank you very much. Dizzy Stitches wants to know what the pattern is. It is called Big Love. It. My husband will find it. It's an all white picture with it. Let's see. Helen's asking if I have tutorials. My husband put a playlist of some of the tutorials that I've done. A lot of these shawls that I'm showing you here are paid patterns. So I can't do tutorials on those because I don't own the pattern. So it wouldn't be fair for me to make a video out of somebody else's pattern. I'm not much of a pattern designer, so my tutorials are limited. But I'm working on improving my skills, and then after that I still have to record them, which takes some time. But I'm working on it. Shane said it's one bright shawl. I have to assume she's talking about this one because it is pretty crazy bright. Yeah, could be any of them. They're all pretty bright. Becky's saying that the shawls are beautiful. Thank you very much. And then the rest are our comments. So yeah. Oh, actually, this one I really like. I wear this one a lot in the spring. It's got some very muted colors in it. This is one of the... This is actually upside down. Let me flip this. Yeah, I'll move the pile. So this shawl is made with stranded cotton. So this is like 4 strands held together, and you work up the stitches, and it's a gradient style yarn. This was a Wooltrum yarn, Melody by Wooltrum, that I got from Etsy, and worked this shawl up. I do not remember what the pattern is. I could find it, but I don't remember the name of it. But I really like this one. It's a big shawl. I think this is I think it's a 150 gram shawl. It could be 200. But again, it works really nice because I get nice long tails that I can like tuck in and then it doesn't fall off all day. But it looks really nice. And it's cotton. So I think it's 50% cotton, 50% polyester. But works really nice and is nice and light, very airy. You can see the pattern a little bit better when I hold it up like this. So that one I really like. I don't know. I'm very attached to all of my shawls. I've got different ones that I wear for different things. Oh, you want to see the one that? This one. This one my husband hates. I will give him that it was a lot prettier as yarn than it turned out to be as a shawl. I really like the pattern, but it is so Eastery. Yeah, Stephanie is right about the pattern there. It's the I'm not going to attempt to say that. And I think the spelling is actually correct there. Or really close to correct. But yeah, that's the right shawl. I think that one's free too. But yeah, this particular shawl, I've worn a couple of times. My husband does not care for it even a little bit. This one, there's actually another one that you like less than this, and I'm pretty sure it's hanging in my office. Yeah, it's the neon version of this. It looks almost exactly the same.
That's the one I was thinking of. That's
Yeah.
why I said the clown one, the carnival one.
Yeah, he was calling it a clown one or a carnival one. This one. So this one is sort of Eastery colors. I have a like. It's hard to describe, but a pastel neon rainbow. I think it was called unicorn something. It looks, if I wear it with a black t-shirt, I look like a bag of sour gummy worms by Trolley. Because I've got my like pink purple hair. If you're picturing like the bag of sour gummy worms at the store, it's a black bag. It's covered in like neon sort of pastel colors and then has like the bright pink lettering. Look exactly like that. But he really hates that shawl. This one is not my favorite either. So, but yeah, that one's hanging in my locker at work actually. Let's see. Oh, Shalene joined us. Welcome. You're late, but you made it, so no big deal. And I think other than that, I'm caught up on comments. Stephanie mentioned what the shawl was, and my husband got the link there in the comment section there. All right, so going back to the Arnie's Arts and Crafts, I've got a couple of yarns left to show you, and then I've got a bag of all sorts of goodies. I honestly don't even remember what all I bought. So this is Ella Ray. It is Cozy Alpaca. So it's a really pretty dark, like, eggplant. Apparently alpaca was the theme of the trip. This is 70% acrylic, 30% alpaca. It's really, really squishy. Just the softest yarn. But yeah, baby alpaca, and again, by Ella Ray. Very, very nice yarn. Color 37. Let's see, it's 100 grams, 178 yards. That makes it a little heavier than worsted weight. Let's see, they're suggesting a 5mm US 8 knitting needle and a 5.5 to 6.5mm crochet hook, which is an I to K hook. Yeah, so really pretty, very squishy yarn, reasonably priced. I really liked this one. I'm not sure what I'm going to turn this into. Again, with the alpaca, it looks pretty fine. Like I said, this is probably a little heavier than worsted, and it looks like it's a pretty fine yarn, but it will bloom. So, and again, that means that the alpaca is going to puff up. So, I'm going to set this off to the side. Last but not least, I got some Queensland Collection Perth yarn. It is Australian Superwash Wool Blend. It is 80% superwash wool, 20% nylon. They say it is a #1 superfine yarn. They recommend a 2.25 to 3.25 millimeter knitting needle or a 2.25 to 3.5 B to E hook. And it is 100 grams, 437 yards. This was a really pretty sort of peacock color. It's got some deep, like, cerulean blue, some, like, true green, and then sort of an eggplanty purple. It is not a really soft wool. I'm hoping that it has just really, really nice stitch definition. So with wool, you sort of get one or the other. With merino being like the dead in the center, like best of both worlds type of yarn. So it's really, really soft, but it usually has pretty good stitch definition. The softer you get, the more halo usually is present, and you don't get very good stitch definition. Or you can go rougher, not necessarily scratchy, but just not like cozy and squishy. But you usually get much, much better stitch definition. So this is a little bit rougher feeling. Again, not really scratchy, just stiffer. Much more like a BFL yarn, which is a blue-faced Leicester. So I'm hoping that that's what this is going to turn into. We'll see how it works up. So I just got the one color, and it's color 101. It's Yarra River. For anyone looking to order that. All right. So into the bag of goodies here. This is pretty interesting. It doesn't seem to be in a resealable bag, so I'm gonna snip the end of it. Yeah. I'm just gonna cut the end here. I knocked into my, what is this thing called? Newton's Cradle. That's what that noise was, if anyone heard the tapping. I hit the Newton's Cradle when I picked up my scissors. So, this is a trigger grip crochet hook. It's a number 0, which is a 3.25 millimeter. I think that's roughly a D hook, but this is what it looks like. It's a really, really odd shape. It's got a crochet hook, like, permanently mounted in here. It is a boy-style hook with the tapered throat. But the intent here is that you hold it like this. Which is really interesting. I have not tried it. Obviously, I just opened it for you guys, but it was too weird not to buy. So I'm really curious. I keep my fingers kind of choked up on the throat as I'm working. So I'm not sure how I'm gonna like sort of being forced backwards, but I really do like the feeling back here. A lot of times when I crochet, let me get a thin hook. So if I've got a real thin hook, this is a 2.25. Let me see if I've got a D hook for comparison. There. So this is a D hook, same size hook, roughly the same height, but the problem that I run into here, and you can probably see this, is I hold my hook pretty tight back here with my pinky, and my pinky will start to cramp because it's pretty tightly coiled around the end of the hook. Even with the squishy thing over the outside of the Clover Amour hooks, it still has to go down pretty far. And that gets easier as you get into larger hooks because you just can't tighten it as far because the end of that hook is fatter. But this one actually like flares out where you would hold it. So I can't hardly close, like I'm holding pretty tight, but I'm not going to be able to get the radius right here, like how much I'm tightening my fist really tight there. So I think it might be actually really comfortable if this hook is nice at all. So the thing that I really love about Clover hooks is how slippery the hook is. So that's actually the part that stops me a lot of times from changing hooks, is that nobody makes hooks that are like as slippery and just cut right through the yarn like Clover does. So this hook isn't all good. This might be a really nice grip. One of the things that could be really cool, and I'd have to see what my husband can come up with, is maybe we could make some sort of like trap for the Clover hooks that would make like a trigger grip, but be able to encase my Clover hooks. That would allow for a variety. So they're all the same height. So something that would allow it to get trapped here. But still like have this shape. So this thing's kind of cool. Maybe we'll 3D print something that works like this, that like could pop open and pop back together. See what we can come up with. But I think it's going to hold my hook in the right orientation. I'm trying to picture making stitches. It sort of holds it sideways, but I think that's roughly how I hold my hook. So we'll see. But yeah, these are pretty interesting. So Stephanie's asking if I've tried any of the hooks from Furls. She got one of the swirl ones in their sale. Those are the Streamline hooks, I believe. I have one Streamline hook and 2 or 3 Odyssey hooks, and I'm not unimpressed, but I'm not blown away. I know they're really expensive ones are supposed to be the like end all be all best hook you've ever used. And I don't know. Unless they're much, much slipperier, I don't see them making a convert out of me. I think the Streamline hook. I thought I had the Streamline hook down here. I know my Odyssey hooks are upstairs. Yeah, here's the Streamline hook. Yeah, my Odyssey hooks are upstairs. Well, actually, that might not be true. I might have one Odyssey hook down here. So, this is my Odyssey hook. It's glossy and black, and then it has like a joint right here where they added the metal part of the hook. These were crowdfunded originally, and so I think this was the first one that I got. They are not labeled in any fashion. I just have to keep them in the right boxes. I think I have an I and a K hook. Yeah, I've got an I and a K hook. Yeah, and I just have them in the boxes that they belong in. But yeah, when they crowdfunded them, for some reason, when they did the design, they just forgot that hooks need to be labeled. And then there was a big like kerfuffle, and they were going to recall them all, and then they just didn't, and I don't know. It was a weird first experience with Furls, but they were much, much, much cheaper than their expensive hooks. Their top end really expensive hooks, I think, are in the like $100 ballpark each. Their Streamline hooks, I think, are in the $20 to $30 range. So still very expensive, but not like going broke expensive. Like in the realm of you could purchase a set. So, this is the Odyssey style hook. And then the Streamline hook is also one of their cheaper lines. And the swirl hooks, I think, are in the Streamline variety, but I think they're made of like resin instead of being made of wood. So this one I got, it was made of wood. It's an F hook. Very, very similar shape and hand feel to the Odyssey hook, but the Streamline weighs a lot less. The metal portion of this is actually quite heavy. Very, very solid. It feels really nice in your hand. But again, the metal was just not slippery enough for me compared to this. And then the Streamline hook, I really didn't care for the throat on it. So you can see it's a little bit, I don't know, maybe if I hold it against the white here. It's a little bit more in line and a little bit pointier than I would like. So you can see what I mean by that is this throat is a little bit sharp here. Where on my clover hooks, it's a softer taper. And I think we're at the limit of the focus on the camera there, but or maybe we're just blowing out the light there, but it's a little bit softer taper, and this one is a little bit sharper. So it was sort of nitpicky, but it just wasn't perfect. And for as expensive as they are, I didn't buy more of them. So they're very nice hooks. You might love them. I haven't found anything that has dethroned the clover hooks as my absolute favorite. Probably a close second are the tulip hooks, which I think I've got one squirreled away over here. These are the tulip hooks. These ones seem to be pretty nice. They're not quite as slippery as the clover hooks, but they are also Japanese made. They seem very well made. I also don't like... So one of the things that is a little bit difficult to tell here is this like flare out here makes the hook just a little bit wider in your hand. It sits just a little bit nicer. And then they also seem to have like a little bit of a flare on the end, which again helps my pinky a little bit, where the tulip hooks come straight down. So it feels a little bit smaller in the hand than... And actually, let me get the comparison hook out. So you can see these are both the eye hooks. And you can see this one flares out quite a bit further than this one here. So it just sits a little bit nicer in my hand. So, yeah. Furls hooks seem nice, but I'm not sure if they're worth the hype. Because you can get a full set of clover hooks from Amazon for about the price of one Furls hook. So, and I've been generally happier with the clover hooks, personally. That being said, they are supposed to be amazing for people who have arthritis in their hands, because they are supposed to be more ergonomically designed with that bulge there. But I'm not sure, because I don't have arthritic hands. Stephanie's saying, honestly, she got it because it was coffee swirled design. I have seen the swirled hooks. They're really pretty. They look, like I said, I think they're resin. And they're like sort of a white swirled with a color, and some of them I think were even sparkly. They're really pretty, and I've been tempted. The Odyssey hooks have come out a couple of times in various colors. They had some that were rose gold and pink, and they had some really beautiful purple ones that I wanted. And I passed on them both times and probably bought more yarn instead. All right, so a few things that I picked up from Arnie's again. These are the teeniest, tiniest seed beads that I've ever seen. I don't even know, like, if I pull one out, if it's even going to show up on stream. But there's one bead. It's roughly the size of a grain of sand. Like, it's transferred to this finger. It's very, very tiny. I don't actually intend to do anything with yarn with these. I bought these to make the tiniest bead lizard. So if you were a kid in the mid-90s, you might remember making bead lizards. I think they're starting to try and gain popularity again. I saw some bead lizard kits. But basically you take a pony bead and you run yarn through it both ways. And then you add more beads back and forth and you change the shape and you make a bead lizard. You can make all sorts of animals, but lizards were like the thing that started it. So I intend to make the tiniest little bead lizard. You need 2 colors, so I've got blue and I've got like a copper color. I also got really, really tiny bead thread and some teeny tiny bead needles. So yeah, my husband might be able to find a picture of a bead lizard to show you. I've made him a really teeny tiny one that sits on his computer up in our office upstairs, and I'm going to make an even tinier one just for fun. So this was a few dollars in beading material, but they were the tiniest seed beads I've ever seen. So, let's see, what else did I get? I got some really odd shaped beads. These I probably will try and use for a shawl. I don't know how it will go. So they had square beads. They are a matte blue and so they're labeled dark amber. Let me see if I can get these open to show you what they look like. They have round holes, and I think they're roughly a 6/0 bead, but instead of being round beads, they're a little cube. So I don't know how well you can see that. If you want to, I've got a few more beads to show, so we're gonna zoom the camera in so that you can see these. But they had squares and triangles, so I got a couple of different square beads, and then I got one set of triangle beads. All right, so we zoomed it in. See how this goes. Okay. There. Sorry, I gotta drive it around. I'm not very good at mirrored, even with instruction. But yeah, so this bead's a little cube. With a little round hole. So I thought they would just be interesting. They're probably gonna look like normal beads on a shawl. Anishnor just saying good night. So good night. Thanks for joining us. Hope to see you next week. I'm gonna open up, see if I can get these amber ones open here. These are like amber on the outside and like gold lined in the center. So they get kind of a little bit of sparkle on the side, which sort of shows through almost like a cat eye marble. You can sort of see the lining. I don't know if I tip this. The light sort of picks it up. It's hard to tip them without covering them. But yeah, there's a little bit of light that plays off the center there. A little bit like a cat eye marble. So those are the square ones. And then I've got some clear ones, I think. They are clear with a lilac center. And they are triangles. So if I stand it up, maybe you can see it's triangle a little bit better. Again, I don't know if they're gonna look totally different than normal beads, but they were cool, so I got them. But yeah, little triangle there. And then the other thing that I was able to pick up, which I hadn't seen anywhere else. So we've talked about beading a couple of times on stream, and I've mentioned that for a fingering weight shawl, you should use 6/0 beads, and for a lace weight shawl, you can use 8/0 beads. But I was able to pick up some 2/0 beads, which I think you could use for a DK weight, possibly even a worsted weight shawl. So I got those in hematite colored. They don't appear to be magnetic hematite. Let me back that guy up. So this is a 2/0 bead. And for comparison, let me grab a 6/0 bead out of a... So these are the beads that you would use on a fingering weight shawl. Let me clear these other guys out of here. And so I think these hematite beads are about the right size to use on like a worsted weight or a DK weight shawl that you could do for the edging. So I've got them in hematite, and then I also got clear ones with gold centers. Yeah, so there's that. That one even looks bigger. But is still labeled a 2/0. So there's the clear, there's the hematite, there's the purple triangles, there's the amber squares, or cubes. They're labeled squares, but they're definitely cubes. And then there's the matte blue cubes. So, the 2/0 beads definitely do have a large hole, which should facilitate getting them on a larger yarn. So the limitation with a 6/0 bead is that you can't get a hook through them that's large enough, and then the yarn doesn't fit comfortably inside. So get all my beads put away so that I don't end up knocking them on the floor and stepping all over them. They're like, beads are like the Legos of the adult craft world. Every once in a while I find one on the floor and it's not pleasant because I usually find it with my foot. But yeah, so if you're looking at beads online, or if you find yourself in north central Michigan and you want some square or triangle beads, that is an option. You can also get 2/0 beads, which I think are large enough for a worsted weight yarn. Oh, I was going to try and put this one and see what size hook that this fits on. What do I got here? This is a D hook. A D hook is too big. So a B hook is a little bit too big. Which means we need to go to like a 175. What do I got in hooks here? That's a 0.75. So my beading hook, my beetle needle, works with a... So I can get a 1.5 hook in here, no problem. My beetle needle is a 1 millimeter hook. If you use it with fingering weight yarn, it works perfect. If you use it with like a sport weight or a DK weight yarn, you have a tendency to split the plies, so it can be a little bit difficult. So if you can use a larger hook with a larger bead, you can work a little bit easier. Looks like 1.5 is the largest tiny hook that I've got. I thought I had a 1.75, but it's like 1.5 is the largest I've got in the box right now. And what did I say? A 2.25 is too big. So a 2 is probably as large as you can get in a 2/0 bead. So if you are looking, you'll need something 2 millimeter or smaller. let's see. Shalene's saying that she was considering using lace weight with a 3-weight, so she wouldn't have a way to use the beads. Just use the skinny for the bead and finish. Okay. So yeah, that would be so if I'm understanding correctly, I think she's saying that she wants to hold a lace weight together with a 3-weight. And just use the skinny yarn for the beads and finish with them both. So that's probably a really good application for pre-stringing your beads. I am not a big fan of pre-stringing beads, but in the case where you want to hold 2 yarns together, you might have a lot easier time doing it if you pre-string onto the lace weight, and then you can slide the beads up and work the 2 together with your stitches. If you normally, what I do is place my beads, and I use a beetle needle. So what you do is you pull up your stitch and then you place your bead over the top. You can still do it if you're holding 2 together, but you're going to have to split the yarns apart and only put the bead on the lace weight and then pick both yarns back up. And so it's going to be a little bit more tedious, I think. Where pre-stringing might be your friend in that particular instance. It's probably a toss-up. Pre-stringing is not my favorite at all. But in this particular case might be the better option. Helen's saying she bought some tiny beads. Looked like a dog nose. And have to crochet tiny dogs to use the beaded noses. I actually have some of those. Yeah. I've got these ones right here. So these are not actually beads, they're safety eyes. But they're nose safety eyes. So hopefully, yeah. So hopefully you can sort of see those, but they are little noses, and then they have like a ribbed back. I don't know, there you can sort of see it there. And you put this little thing over the top, and it locks into each of the little ribs depending on how tight you push it. So you can use these on like kids' toys and stuff. But yeah. So, I've seen them as beads, and then they have like little indentations for the nose. They're a little bit more detailed. But as soon as she said that, I remembered that I had these. I thought they had the little indents for the nose holes. But those ones don't. I've got all sorts of weird safety eyes. Cat eyes and such. So, all right. Set that aside. All right. Shalene's asking if she should just pre-string. I don't know. I would maybe try just working up a couple of stitches and seeing how miserable it is to split the yarns apart and just put the beads on the lace weight. If that seems like it's going to be doable, then you can place your beads. But otherwise, I would just pull those couple stitches out and pre-string if it doesn't work. Use a washer to squeeze them on the post. I don't follow there. A washer. I think I generally understand what you mean, but I'm not picturing how that works with beads. So, wait for clarification there. All right, I'm gonna put this guy away. This is my K hook. My I hook is upstairs. All right. Put all the goodies back in the bag. What time is it?
10 o'clock.
Okay. I'm thinking we probably ought to save the Hobby Lobby stuff for tomorrow or for next week. So I've got a handful of Hobby Lobby yarns to show you guys, but we're gonna hold off and show those next week. Just because we've already been streaming for a couple hours, and I want to make sure that people get to come back in. Oh, I understand. Shalene's comment is saying that she uses a washer to squeeze the safety eyes, which makes a lot more sense. So the post there, the safety eyes are really difficult to squeeze tight. But it's important that you get them tight because generally you're using safety eyes for kids' items. And you don't want them to come off loose and be a choking hazard. So you get them on really tight. And that can be really difficult to do because you don't get a lot of room. So if you put a washer over the back, you've got a lot more purchase. Like you can use a lot more strength to squeeze them. So I understand now. That makes perfect sense. It's a really good tip. And Helen's mentioning that she's also got different sizes and colors of eyes. I bought all sorts of eye colors and I made a bunch of amigurumi and I didn't really like using the colored eyes personally. Somehow they were just always creepy. I'm not very good at doing doll faces, so maybe it was just me, but I ended up, anything that I put eyes on, I just use solid black ones. And they looked less lifelike, but I don't know. They were more cartoony and less scary. Maybe it was just my eyes were not very good quality ones, but I've seen some really beautiful dolls where they've actually used like eyes with color and they're pretty. Mine did not turn out that way. But what I was saying before is that we should probably wrap up because I know a few people need to get to bed. It's late some places. I guess if you're towards the west coast of the US, you're still, early evening, but yeah, we'll save the Hobby Lobby stuff for next week. And I think the plan is still to stream next week, Tuesday at 8 o'clock. And coming up later this month, I doubt we will stream Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve, which are both Tuesdays. So we're probably going to lose 2 weeks in a row. But the next couple of weeks, we should be able to stream 8 o'clock Tuesdays. Generally we've been getting the post up a couple hours before we go live. If you ever have questions outside of the live streams, you can message me at on Facebook and Instagram at Experiments in Crafting. You can also put a comment once the video posts. You can put a comment in the regular comment section on YouTube. But yeah. So, the little bell notifications up there as well. For anybody who is not a subscriber, please subscribe and click the little bell so that you get notifications. If you are already a subscriber and you're not getting enough notifications, you can click on the little bell and do the little drop down thing and change it from personalized to all. Just be really careful that you don't unsubscribe. We've had a couple of live streams where I've mentioned subscribing or clicking the bell, and we've had people accidentally unsubscribe. So don't do that. But yeah, if you like the stream and you like what you're seeing, hit like and subscribe to the channel. Yeah. What my husband's mentioning is just because Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve fall on Tuesdays, we might be able to shift the stream to Thursday or something like that. Where it won't be, we won't be traveling for the holidays and stuff. So, if we're going to move the stream, I will post it on Facebook, I will post it on Instagram, and I will also post it in the community section of YouTube. So I don't know how the community section works, but it will be there. So you check in around the holidays and see what the other posts, and I'll try and let you guys know on future live streams this month. I think we should have 2 more before Christmas Eve. So, all of that being said, I'm going to wrap up for the evening. we didn't get a whole lot of time for questions. We talked about some shawls, but next week we'll do the Hobby Lobby yarn and then any questions that you guys have. So come with your questions and anything you want to talk about yarn related. Have a great rest of your week. Thanks for watching. Bye.